This is our seventh edition of Landa Talks. This is basically a space where we bring in experienced advisors or consultants who have had done engagements in the past to share their tips, tricks, what they've learned, and if they would do anything different, if they can add something new. And hopefully, this is useful for everyone. No better teacher than experience. So I'm very glad that we're hosting Gabriel García da Rosa today. Uh, Gabriel is the VP of Growth at Nowports. We got a chance to talk a little bit in the past. He's got a couple of advisory engagements, and he's willing to share his experience today. So we're super grateful. Gabriel, welcome. And I think that the best place to start is if you can tell us a bit about your background, your experience. That's a good start for the conversation.
Of course. Hi, Pedro. How everybody in the call? Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. So yes, my background is pretty much I have been in sales for in the startup world for almost 10 years. I worked for 6 years in the US for 2 different startups, one in San Luis, Missouri, and one in Dallas, Texas. Then I moved to Santiago in Chile. And then I joined now for almost 4.5 years ago. And I have been working in Mexico, Chile, and now we are in Miami. But I am from Montevideo, Uruguay. So that is pretty much where I'm from. And saying that, of course, I'm a huge football fan, like everybody in Uruguay. Sales growth, that have been my background. And I love the ecosystem and startup in LATAM especially.
Thanks for that, Gabriel. Also a huge football fan, I think most of us in LATAM. So that's great. So maybe we can start with, tell us a bit about your journey into like advisory or consulting specifically. I think that the question we always ask at first, sort of to demystify it for the rest of members or for people who are getting started is, how you landed your first engagement, how that came to be, and I think we can start there.
Yeah, of course. So the most time I spent in Nowports, pretty much, you guys know that we started 4.5 years ago. We went from 3 people in Nowport to almost 850 people. We grow really fast in the last few years, and that gives us a lot of visibility and exposure, right? We are part of Endeavor, and we were in a lot of media. So company from different part of LATAM, especially, I would say LATAM and Spain, start reaching out to us, either because they wanted to connect or they just wanted to have a quick chat. The most we start spending time on events and being part of the ecosystem, the most you start creating network. And that networking start introducing you to people, right? So you met someone and that person, oh, I know another company is trying to do something similar. Maybe you guys can have a chat. What actually happened was that visibility gave us the opportunity for companies to reach out to us and say, hey, I would like to meet you, and I don't know if you can help me with 30 minutes because I'm struggling to get the structure of my sales team together, or I'm struggling to establish the goals, the sales targeting. So that is how some companies start reaching out. And I start taking those calls, right, to see if I can help. And I started seeing a path. I started seeing that most companies on different stage were having the same problem. So companies in early stage were having the same kind of problem and situations and concern. Some other company in growth stage were having another ones, but were pretty much the same. So after a while, I was seeing companies suffering things that I already have suffered in the past, in the first couple of years, and not poor. So my previous experience was actually useful for them, you know. And at the end, I was like, okay, if I can help someone not make the same mistake I did in the past, that would be great. You know, that would be a great start. And that's pretty much how people start reaching out. And I'm going to be honest, also, my wife, she was one to start pushing, like, hey, you should start doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm too busy. I'm working too many hours, and I need to be focused just here. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to this company. And I start working with this guy from Uruguay, a startup from Uruguay that is Order It. And I started working with them, having one call a week. And after a few calls, they were like, hey, we want to actually have you in the team like a formal advisor. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it. And that's how I launched my first advisory gigs, if you want to call it. And after that one, another came, and after that one, other opportunities. But to be honest with you, and I think I talked to Gabriel about this, is you also need to be careful which project you engage, because I want to make sure that not only I like the project that I'm working with and the people I'm working, but I also want to make sure I'm adding value. If I don't feel I'm adding value, I don't want to waste anybody's time or money.
That's very interesting, and I guess it's a good segue to my next question, which is, what are some of the aspects that you enjoy the most of this type of work, and maybe what are some of the parts you don't like that much? That'd be very interesting.
I'm gonna start with the last question. Is the main challenge is to understand that you are not executing anymore, so it's a role more of guidance and advisory. So for people like me that we are hands-on executing people, like we like to execute and have team to execute, advisory is different. These people don't work for you, you actually work for them, and you are there to help them, and they have a problem that you might have more experience. And also the key is not to tell them what to do, but help them to realize what to do, because my background is international business, in logistics, in sales, but they might have a problem of organizational a problem, a structure or whatever. And I might be able to help them to realize how to fix that problem. But I feel the challenge is not get too involved, because at the end you need to help them to perform better, So that would be my main concern there, was that learning experience.
And what about some of the parts you enjoy the most?
I actually, at the beginning, I was worried that I would be distracted, for my main focus that was Nowport. But then I realized that it was a win-win situation, because taking my mind for 1 second out of my routine was actually really healthy for me, honestly. And also for Nowport, because I started having conversation about problems that other companies were having, that then I was like, the way we are talking about how to solve it, I actually can use it in my day-to-day, The way they are seeing at this problem, I actually have similar problems at different stages, right? And with different size of team. But I have, at the end of the day, in certain topics, like in my case, growth and sales, that is my expertise, the company has pretty much the same issues, just on different scales. If you have a 2 or 3 people in sales team, you might have problem of prospecting, closing, close one ratio, ticket size of the customer, whatever. When you have 200 people in sales, guess what? You have pretty much the same issues, but in another level. You have data problems, now you have process problem, you have structure problem, you have other issues. So when you start having that experience and getting exposed to that, you realize you're starting to have a good feeling of how to get around some problems, And actually, I think the key is to start being proactive and try to don't get even to the point that you have those problems, So I really enjoy it. To answer your question, I really enjoy it because it took me out of my routine and actually helped me to get back to my work on a daily basis and do better. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy to meet different people, especially entrepreneurship founders, with this mindset of get things done. It's amazing. It's actually, I think, feed me and fill me with a lot of energy, to be honest with you.
That's very interesting, and something a lot of people talk about, right? So if you're solving different problems, you even get more ideas and getting your mind of the day-to-day stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we had the chance to prepare for this conversation a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, and I think it'd be valuable for members from that first engagement to the couple of engagements you do right now. What does your offering look like these days? What types of projects are you doing? Are they different? Are they the same? That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, definitely they have been changing. And I think I also improve as an advisor or coach, as you want to call it, because you are learning how to approach, the problems. So now I have more like a methodology that I apply all the time. And I can tell you a little about that now. But I want to mention before, connected to the previous question, is that when you know about something, if you watch something, you learn, right? If you listen about something, you learn even more. When you practice something, you learn about it even more. But when you teach something, you become really, really much better. I don't know how to say it, but you become an expert. So doing advisory actually made me better in some aspect of my daily routine and some aspect of my experience that maybe I was not as good as I thought I can be, So this experience of be teaching and be coaching is actually really useful for you as a professional and as a person. So I just wanted to mention that. Going back to your question is, the way I approach now, every time I have an advisory or a company that want to work with me is, first of all, I have a couple of sessions that I don't charge anything about those sessions. It's just conversation because I need to meet these people. I want to meet these people. I want to meet who I'm going to be working with. I want to understand if there's a good fit, because it's always going to be a good or bad fit. You either have a good dynamic and a good energy and a good chemistry, and you actually feel like you can work with these guys, or not. And then the project, I have to feel something about the project. Sometimes I meet people that is amazing, but I don't believe in the project, or I don't feel anything about the project. I prefer not to get involved, because the time is a limited asset. And if I want to be working with someone, I want to make sure I add value. And in order for me to add value, I need to feel excited about whatever they're working on. I need to feel excited about the project, and I need to feel excited about them. If I trust them and I trust the project, I'm definitely going to give my best, a better version of myself, So now I have a methodology that when I start working with someone, I do those first 2 sessions. On the first session, I sit with them. I ask a lot of questions to try to understand their situation, their stage, their problem, their structure, their team, what are the main pains they have. And after that, what I ask them always is like a data room, a lot of data, because I'm a data-driven guy, to be honest. And I feel like in sales and in growth, it's a lot about data. Okay, I know I'm not going to be able to fix from outside your culture. I might mention, hey, you might have a culture problem that need to be fixed, but I definitely can help you to improve your numbers and improve your outcomes. So the second thing I do is ask a set of metrics and data and do a lot of analysis. And after that, pretty much I start working with you. I start establishing like I would say, roadmap of what we're going to achieve and what we want to achieve. So pretty much I set the expectation from both sides, what they want to achieve with the conversation with me and the advisory, and what I want them and myself to achieve during those advisory times. Once we have that, I put it in writing. I send to them. It's pretty much like, this is our agreement about this is what we want to achieve. I don't know, establish new structure, get new compensation plan, establish the goals, improve 20% the conversion, improve the ticket average by 35%, achieve $1 million MRR. I don't know, whatever it is, I put it in writing. I put time to that, and that is the plan. And that's the first thing I do. And after that is week by week getting to touch about that. Because the worst that can happen to an advisor or a coach is to get to a meeting to someone and they don't even know what they want to talk about. That is a waste of everybody's time.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you don't mind sharing, what are some of these projects you're working on? I know there's some growth coaching, some org structure building, and some other projects. Do you mind touching on those a little bit?
In my case, I'm usually always working with the growth teams or sales team and founders. So on the advisory I do, we actually work on the expansion to a new market and how to do the go-to-market, the analysis of the market. Even in my part of advisory, I help them on the legal stuff, connection, introduction, PR. So as an advisor, you're supposed to have some experience, some network. So you use all your network, your expertise to try to help these people to have a soft landing, for example, a soft launch. So in one of the projects, I helped them to open a new market. I actually helped them to open Mexico for a Uruguayan startup and build the entire team in Mexico, have the go-to-market strategy, get the first customers, establish the goals, etc. And we did that from January to now, and it has been really, really well. Actually, Mexico quickly became the #1 country, and they grow 300% the results of the company in 6 months. So seeing that is amazing. And that's what I like about advisory on the sales aspect, that it's easy to see the numbers if you're actually having an impact, I mean, if I see the numbers going up and I see them happy about it, I'm happy. So that is one of the projects I help. And the other project is more It's a team that is already exists. They already having a team together, and they just needed a lot of improvement on the process. So it was about establishing a whole new sales cadence, structure on the CRM, improving the data, creating a lot of dashboard of visibility to actually take actions, creating benchmark performance, getting to improve the benchmark of performance of each individual contributor to the team. And it was more like a slowly process, but again, in 4 or 5 months, we improve the overall results, the performance of the team. I mean, the results are really good, and the forecast for the rest of the year is look amazing. So again, project that is easy to measure. I'm a data-driven guy. I try to make the people in the other side to be data-driven, so we are not discussing just opinions. When you have good results, usually sales team are happy about it, sales manager are happy about it, and founders are happy about it.
That's very interesting, and I sort of snuck that question in there because I'm gonna get a little more tactical, and I think it's a good way to prepare that part. So this is a topic that usually comes up, and there's different perspectives on it. But basically, how do you go about pricing this offering, since it varies a lot? Obviously, there's people who charge only in equity, other people who charge per hour, cash, a combination. What's your system? How do you think about that?
I take in consideration my hourly at work, and how much my normal hour is value. I also take in consideration that these are hours that I do after time. So it's always after 5, 6 p.m., So it's time that I'm taking out of my family, my wife, or football, or whatever else I want to do. So I remember my first experience as an advisor was a couple of years ago. It didn't last much because I was feeling that I was not adding the value, and the people was not coming to prepare to the meeting, and like I mentioned before. And I remember that at that time they offered me equity, and I didn't have any fee per hour. And it didn't work because not only for them, they didn't have like the commitment to show up to the meeting because they were not paying me for the hour, but also created on me like this, oh, if something else come up, I'm going to change the hour, So I realized that was really important to put like a hourly fee. And actually, when I started working with these companies I'm working now, they were like, oh, we want to give you equity. I'm like, that's fine, but I'm actually charging you per hour. And the first few months, I don't want any equity because you need to, it's like pretty much the vesting and, cliff concept is the same. Like you need to see how engaged I'm going to be and how much value I'm going to add. So let's do 3 months, no equity, but you pay me per hour. And I'm going to charge you a good amount of per hour. So you value my time and you value your money. And I also going to value your time. So now I have the responsibility. Like I have in my schedule this advisory hour. And for me, it's important to show up, to be prepared, and also for them to show up and be prepared. And actually it's working pretty well. So now for me, I have a combination. I have a fee per hour plus equity. But the equity is always attached to the time I'm working with these companies. So there is a vesting involved. There is a cliff involved that I actually present to them that, hey, let's do a cliff of 3 to 6 months. If it doesn't work, I don't want for this company to be giving equity away, So I think it's a good practice for them to, hey, make sure these advisors are engaged, adding value, and they actually care about the project. And 3 to 6 months is a good time to figure that out,
That's very interesting, sort of having the incentives aligned.
For sure.
Yeah. I just want to mention really quick, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So feel free to leave questions in the chat or to chip in. I'll just have 2 last questions and then I'll open it up. So another like more tactical question that I always like to ask is, how do you think about time management, right? So your work at Nowports is very demanding. You also, as you said, have like a family. You want to have some time for football and this, that, and the other. So how do you organize? Do you have any sort of frameworks, tools that you use? That'd be very interesting.
I work a lot on the Google Calendar. So pretty much my Google Calendar is my agenda. Everything is in there. I use different colors according to the importance of the meeting and according to the level of engagement that I need to be. So I use that for my daily basis in Nowport, but I also use that for the rest. I actually have my football game, my paddle games, everything is scheduled there.
Wow.
So I can see it. It's Saturday morning and my cell phone is like, oh, you have a paddle game in 1 hour. So it's actually helped me to for this time management situation. So Google Calendar use different colors according to the task. So for example, if I have one-on-ones, I have different color for that. If I have advisory with one company, I have a special color for that company. If it's now for global management meetings, I have a different color. If it's time for me, that is really important to block myself to actually work on something and not have so many meetings. I actually block myself time for that as well. And then for the advisory part, I really recommend to do it after hours, so doing outside the hour of your normal job. And then I have special days. I do advisory on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and that's it. So I either schedule you on Wednesday or Thursday. So I don't put advisory in any other day. Why? Because I want to keep myself organized, and I want to keep myself. I play in a football tournament every Monday. I have paddle games every Tuesday night. So I want to keep that. I don't want to just keep adding hours of work. I want to have a balance. So that keep me organized. And if someone needs to reschedule, we reschedule for next week.
Interesting. I think it's the first case where we have color coding, so that's very interesting. And my final question is, obviously you have a sales background, right? And you mentioned that most of your engagements and your clients came from your network, actually. But I would be doing a disservice if I didn't ask you this question. If that wasn't the case, like from your network, how would you use your sales knowledge to actually source leads for your advisory? And obviously there's no right answer. I'm just super curious.
So if I want to do advisory and I want to get more customers, well, I'm a sales guy, so I definitely will have a process in place. I would pretty much create a CRM cadence. So I will make sure which industry and which segment I want to add value. Probably I will define it geographic as well. Maybe I'm going to start with companies in Uruguay, or maybe I want to do LATAM in a few countries. And I feel LinkedIn is a really powerful tool. And there is some other powerful tool outside, but LinkedIn to reach out, to keep up on customers and potential customers, create yourself like a pipeline, either using an Excel or using an actual CRM. You can get a Pipe Drive or Soho Monday.com for one user, and it's not going to be that much. And then you keep creating leads. For example, now I do it a little less, but when we start Nowport, and of course nobody knew about Nowport and nobody knew about us, I was adding over 200 people a week on LinkedIn, on a specific audience. So in that case, it was a lot of people in the logistic and startup industry, So I feel like it's key that anybody who want to bring like a brand, an individual brand, is creating a network. And that network you create by creating a specific brand on LinkedIn, on maybe some other social media. I'm horrible on social media, so I'm not a good example. I don't use Facebook or Instagram or anything, but I create a LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a good audience creation tool because you can actually target by country, by industry, by position. So if you want, hey, I want to help only head of sales or head of growth or VP, you just start adding a lot of those guys. And once you see what they're posting and what is coming out of those companies, you can see what stage they are. You do a little bit of research and you're like, okay, this is a 10 people company in Mexico, definitely early stage. I can help them. They're probably having this type of issues. So then I reach out to them on LinkedIn, or I try to find their email them and say, hey, I can help you with this. Let me know if you have 20 minutes to talk. And trying to have a nice conversation. And again, if you find someone that you can actually help, usually people is okay with you helping them, So don't try to sell them something. Try to actually see if you can add value. If you see, hey, you are actually an early stage company. Are you struggling with data in your CRM? Are you struggling with your process? Are you having issues closing new deals? They're probably going to say yes to something. They're going to be like, yeah, I'm having issues with my sales targeting. I'm having issues with my process. Okay, if you want, we can schedule one call and I can try to help you with that. If you show up to the next call and you add value, they are going to offer you something. They're going to be like, hey, how we can do this more often. And now you have the ball in your side. You're like, yeah, I can do advisory for you, and I charge you this. It's not that easy. It sounds really easy. It's not that easy, but
No, that's amazing. And obviously what you're saying is there's work behind it, right? You still have to reach out, do the ICP and all the good stuff.
But think about conversion. Is worst conversion you can have, let's say 10%. So every 10 companies you reach, you're gonna close one. So if you have an even worse percentage, you might need 1%. Well, reach out to 100 companies, you're gonna close one, and that's a 1% conversion. That's a terrible conversion. But if you have that, at least you know your numbers. So play the odds.
Yeah. And then you just have to reverse engineer, and you know how many more or less to reach out.
Exactly. Once you know your conversion, you're like, okay, I know every time I reach 10 people, I close one. How many advisory I want to give? 5, 50 people I need to reach out.
Makes perfect sense. Thanks, Gabriel. So now I'm going to open it up to the audience. So anyone who wants to chip in a question, don't be shy. Feel free to go for it. So do we have anyone?
I guess just to open it up, Gabriel, and it's a good segue from the last point that you touched. But how do you train your team to manage rejections, just in general? I mean, you were the first employee. You've seen Nowports grow to like tens or hundreds of millions in revenue. You reach unicorn status. There's definitely a process in which, in the beginning, it was like super hard to knock on doors and get rejections yourself. That trains a muscle. But then as well, you trained a lot of people. I think you told me you had like hundreds of employees. So how do you teach them to manage rejections and overcome imposter syndrome?
Look, one of the first positions that we place people at Nowport in the sales team is SDR. SDR, self-development representative. Man, those guys are getting rejected every day by hundreds of people. And my first job was SDR. My first job in sales was in a startup in the US, and I was a SDR. Trust me, I was getting rejected all the time. So I feel like this gives you like a really thick skin. And it actually, once you realize that you need to get 99 no to get that yes make everything worth it. So the thing here is that you need to understand there is a process behind, and you need to show metrics. That's why I always say to people, hey, data. And a lot of companies in LATAM are lacking on having a good data set. Once you have the good set of metrics and you have track of that, it's showing you that any process has a good outcome or an outcome. So if you have getting rejected, but you see the results, being rejected is part of the process. If you want to be an entrepreneurship, an advisor, a salesperson, or successful in anything that you do in life, you're gonna get rejected. And let me tell you this: getting rejected or failing or whatever you want to call it is the best experience to actually be successful after that. And I want to give you one example that is a true example. When I was doing SDR, I was calling hotels from the US to Argentina. So my first market was Argentina. And Argentinian people are really straightforward, like Uruguay. Like the culture is like, hey, I don't want this, I don't want it. They're not gonna waste time. And I remember I called a hotel, and the guy picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, this is Gabriel. And he's like, I don't want it. I'm like, I didn't even say anything. I don't want it. Whatever you're selling, I don't want it. And I was pissed. I was pissed. I was like, what? I couldn't even talk to this guy. And I have been trying to get his phone for a while, trying to get it on the phone for a while. But I was like, okay, let's be smart about it. And I was actually helping already hotels in the area. I have 5 customers around that same hotel. So I studied the numbers of those hotels. I studied the occupancy rates, the price. I studied everything. So I called back to the guy and I say, hey, I know you don't want to buy, but just let me tell you that your hotel has 50% occupancy, and hotel A, B, and C that are working with me have 75% occupancy. You are charging $89 a night. Your competition is charging 109. So you might not want to listen to me, but if I'm you, I will listen to me, because I have a software that's going to help you to sell more. So what is going to take for you to give me 20 minutes of your time if I can actually show you results? After that call, the guy's like, I'm sorry, I want to schedule a call with you. and actually sold to that guy. He bought it. Okay. So that's a success story. I have 9,000 not successful stories. Okay. But that's one of the good ones.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Do you have any other questions? All things sales or advisory consulting.
Well, I'm going to make one question. Gabriel, since you are in this world of consulting, what do you think has been the most difficult thing that you have to face just with being an advisory? I mean, in your experience, what has been like the most difficult thing you had faced?
Great question, Camila. I would say after a few sessions and start working on things with a company, realize that part of the problem they were having was the team, and it's hard as an advisor that you are outside the company to tell them someone, hey, you might need to do some changes on your team, especially when you're telling a founder that he might need to change a leadership role. Because it's hard from someone from outside to be like, hey, I show up once a week, I talk to you, and now I'm telling you pretty much that you need to fire someone. So it's a hard situation because you need to be careful and you need to be like, I would say, careful on what you said. But again, in my case, I'm more of sales growth advisor, coach, and it's all about numbers. So I was really, the way I did it was showing numbers, and I was like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this number. And the guy, and he was like, oh, this person is hurting the team. I'm like, yes. And so that was one of the most complicated situations, but it worked out pretty well. Actually, that person was happy for that company for a long time, and it was not performing. That person was not happy in that company. And this company actually changed a little bit the structure and hired new people, and they improved performance and overall the situation.
We have one question in the chat from Alvaro. He says, how do you manage churn, self-initiated or from the company that hired you, within your consulting practice?
How I manage churn, about like the churn that the companies that I advise has, or churn, I didn't understand if it was about the customers.
Yeah, I think it's how do you manage churn within your advisory clients, if I understand correctly.
Okay. First thing is I'm really picky on the project that I do advisory. I know it's not because I feel like I have to be picky, it's because I think it's important to, like I mentioned before, to work in projects that you believe and make you excited and with people that you want to work with. So right now I have 3 different projects of advisory that I'm doing. And I usually wouldn't take more than that. Maybe other people that have more time can do more than that, but for me, 3 is more than enough, and it's probably too much. So number one, that being said, I have a really good relationship with these companies. I established a strong relationship. One founder of one of the company came to Miami, that is where I live, and spent 4 days with me. We're having lunch together and dinner together. He was working on his thing, I was working on my thing, but at the end, we spent time together. We actually play football together. So when I do this, I try to do it all the way, establish a strong relationship, a strong connection, because that makes you more believable. And churn is one of the biggest problems that the company has. And it really depends on the segment and industry you are, how you measure churn, if it's a seasonality issue, if it's a frequency issue, or you have some other issues. Usually when I see churn in a company, the first thing I see and I try to investigate and deep down is, are they selling the right product to the right people? Are they targeting the right customer? And the answer when there is a lot of churn usually is they are trying to push a sell to the wrong people, to the wrong sales. It's the wrong sell, you know what I mean? So when I see a company with a lot of churn, it's either number one, and this happens a lot, they are overselling. So they're saying, oh, I have all this, this. So when customers show up to the platform or to whatever they're selling, the customer is like, hey, this is not what you told me that you guys were doing. So there's a misunderstanding of the expectation. So sometimes companies create too much expectation and then your product don't fit the expectation. And yes, you're going to have churn because customers want to get at least what you told them you are doing. So number one is a lack of fit, product fit, okay, product market fit. And number two is that most companies forget that doing a sell is just one part of the process. But once you bring a customer on board, there is a whole post-sell service that you need to provide. And I feel that lately, the customer service of many companies has got worse. Now everybody is just trusting all these chatbots and all this artificial intelligence, right? So now pretty much everybody thinks, oh, we don't need to answer the phones anymore, and we don't need to answer the emails of our customer anymore. And if the customers are mad, it's okay. Someone is going to answer. I feel like that's why people and companies are having a churn issue right now. And that's why I see in 2023, the whole LATAM ecosystem changing their mindset a lot from a hyper growth mentality to a more like efficiency growth. And part of the efficiency growth is to make sure you have the right type of customer, that your value proposition actually make fit with the product you're selling and the market you are targeting, and then to provide the right service. And sometimes less is more. So sometimes having a little less customers but provide better service is better than has a lot of customers that are unhappy. So I don't know if that answers the question, but also, again, I will go back to data. Of course, we analyze the lifetime value of the customers in the 3 companies that I work with. We have a data of the segment and tiers of those customers, and it's always a storytelling on the data. So I usually find out that in some companies, the segment and the industry they're targeting, when you segment by size, you have more churn certain type of customers, okay? So I see companies saying, hey, my enterprise customers are dropping. And guess what? Because your product is not ready for them. You shouldn't be targeting them yet. You are too early. Wait, get more mature, get your product market fit higher, and let's go for it. Number 2 is if you have a problem that a lot of your small customers are churning, well, again, you might start thinking you have to be changing your target, and you might have to go to small, middle-sized customers, because maybe your product is not for those small customers. Because small customers usually are more needy because they need more action. Because for them, whatever you're doing is more important, If you are giving someone any kind of tool and they're a big company, this is one of the many tools they're using. But if you're giving a small company a tool, this might be a huge investment for them. So that's why they are going to be on their phone and your email all the time. But when you analyze the ticket and how much work they create for you, maybe that's not your right target, again. So that's why I do study of segmentation, churn, lifetime value, and average ticket to make a strategy behind that. And sometimes you have to let some customer go, and you need to focus your sales effort in the sweet spot when you are actually adding value. What tools do I use for that? In the companies I work with, we have tools like Salesforce, Tableau, etc. So it's a lot of BI dashboard. But I recommend everybody to at least start with a good Excel dashboard. Create Excel that you can track the data. At least if you don't have any other tool, or if you don't have the money or whatever resources, you can start with an Excel. In the companies, I do the advisory. I create Excels when we put all this data, and the Excels tell us the story. It's like, oh, look, your segment number 2, you are churning more than anybody else. The ticket is this one, and you have this conversion, and your pipeline is showing me this. So let's focus on starting more on tier number 2, number 1 and number 3, because the timeline value is better. They are not churning, and they're more happy with the value proposition. So now you change the focus of your system.
Thanks for that, Gabriel. That was super insightful. I think good questions so far. I don't know if we have any others.
Maybe I have one. So I'm curious, since you do, and I also do both advisory and then more embedded work. When you initially do sort of what I would call like get to know you diagnostic scoping, like, hi, what's your situation kind of call, how do you decide which it should be, or steer somebody in the direction of whether it's an advisory relationship or if it's more of a hands-on, I'm in it, I own things kind of role. Because for me, it's been mainly clients budget driven up until this point. But I'm curious to know how you think about that.
It's a great question. I don't know if I'm going to be really useful there because I have a full-time job that I have been really involved with Nowports from day one. So that's when I say full-time job, I mean, I work on Saturdays with Nowports if I have to, like I love what I do there and I love the company and the guys where I work there and the team. So for me, anything else is just an advisory option, I don't have any other option for them. When someone reach out to me, it's never an option. It happens sometimes that a company reach out and say, hey, will you join us? I'm like, no, it's not even an option. It's not in the table. So for me, it's always just advisory. But if you have that possibility, flexibility of saying, hey, whenever a customer reach out, I might get more involved or less involved. I feel like number one, yes, the budget that the company is willing to have open for that is gonna help you to see, hey, how many hours I can dedicate to these guys. But also, don't get stuck only on the budget, Abigail, because it's all about the return. If you provide a really good value, and actually you can prove that. That's why I always say, hey, try to track all the metrics. Whatever you're doing, track it. Show them 3 months later. Show them, hey, since you start working with me, this is the progress your company has done. Show them with their own numbers. Help them to see that value. When you show that value now and you like the project, after a few months, maybe you're like, hey, we should double down. Let's do 2 times a week. Let's do 3 times a week. But I think it should be a fit between you actually wanting to get more involved and them willing to invest more in you because you show the value that you provide, So I will always say, give it a little time to any project before you get involved, For me, those first, like I mentioned before, those 2 or 3 meetings that I have with every company I met, and they're always free, I never charge for that, is key because those 3 meetings were telling me, yes, I want to get involved in this. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I want to get involved and I shouldn't get involved, and my wife is like, you have too much already, right? I'm like, you're right, maybe I shouldn't get involved in this project. But a lot of good projects come sometimes and you're like, oh, this one is gonna be good. But I also want to be fair with myself. I know where I add value, I know where I can add value and when I can add value that is really easy to see. So I know my sweet spot of company that I can add value right now, and it's early stage, growth stage company. If any company come above that or too early with an idea, I cannot add any value. Like, I'm gonna give an example. A really good company came to me and said, hey, we want your advisory. And I say, what is your problem? And he's like, oh, I have too much demand. I have too much demand from customer, but I don't have hands to respond to them. I'm like, okay, I cannot help you. And she's like, why? Because I can help you to get more demand, but I cannot help you to hire more people in operational side. That's not my strength of expertise. So I just say, I cannot help you. Abigail, I don't know if I answered your question, but I try to be honest on my question, on my answer.
I think one of my metrics is how many people they've probably fired since I joined, which is an unfortunate one, but it's a role that I oddly find myself stepping into as that sort of advisor and coach, is giving people the other perspective and hiring too. But anyway, that was a segue from an earlier comment. It's a tough one. Thanks.
Interesting. Do we have any last takers? If not, we can start closing out. All right, I guess not. So thank you, Gabriel. This was amazing. I think we all got a lot of value from it. I know I did. And thanks for joining. Thanks everyone for joining. And well, we hope to talk to you again soon, Gabriel. This was great.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the invitation, Gabriel and Pedro, and thank you everybody to show up. And I'm glad to be here and may make a small contribution to the ecosystem. We need to keep pushing together.
Thank you for that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.